Well, Dunedin North Labour MP Dr David Clark called a meeting between parents and the Ministry of Education back in March to discuss changes to school bus services. Dr Clark says nothing's happened since that time and he wants some movement on the issue, and he joins us tonight with the background. First of all, good evening, Dave.
Good evening.
Tell us what's at the heart of this issue.
At the heart of this issue is fairness. There are a group of families around the Blueskin Bay area that have kids enrolled in schools in town, and they've been getting a free bus service into town for some time. The Ministry of Education has decided in its wisdom to change the interpretation of a rule it's had in place that's been interpreted one way for 20 years, that now says a bunch of those kids are no longer entitled to free bus services. And that's left parents either forking out $4,000 in some cases for bus fees for the year that they weren't expecting, or having to change the schools for their kids, which is very disruptive, as you'd understand.
So how many families are we talking here?
Look, there's probably about a dozen families affected. It's hard to know exactly how many, which ones are choosing to get involved and fight the fight as opposed to those broader ones affected. And of course any future families that might consider bringing their kids into town have a more restricted choice of which schools to send their kids to if this policy continues.
So what are you wanting from the Ministry?
Well, I'd like a response from the Ministry firstly. They did turn up to the meeting, to their credit, on the 23rd of March. The local member, Michael Woodhouse, was invited. He didn't show up, so at least the Ministry fronted with some people. They promised to get back to us within a month, and now it's nearly 3 months. Along the way they've exchanged a few emails saying, oh, it'll just be a little bit longer, it'll just be a little bit longer, and now 3 months on, close to 3 months on, we're wondering whether the cheque really is in the mail and whether those questions around fairness and the outcomes for those individuals who have already enrolled kids are going to get a decent look in.
So what's happened in this time, in the meantime?
Well, that's right. In the meantime, you've got families literally paying who can barely afford to bring their kids in. They have to change all their routines. And they're making choices too as families about next year. Do they send one of their kids, if they can afford to the school that they've already been going to, and then the next kid to another school? You can imagine what happens with picking up after sports for schools and all of those kinds of logistics. This decision has got all the hallmarks of the worst kind of decision making made in Wellington and then imposed down here. The bus goes the same route every day still. It's 25 kilometres the same way. I think the parents would probably be happy just to be dropped into town and find their own way for the last kilometre for the kids, you know. They just want to get that basic way so the kids get into town. Look, it's only, in some cases, 500 metres further down the road to drop them at a different school just because they're wearing a different coloured uniform. It doesn't make sense.
So what needs to happen next then?
Well, what needs to happen next is that I think the Ministry needs to say, look, this isn't fair. We are driving this bus 25 kilometres down the road. We can take an extra 500 metres to the nearest school to drop these kids off, particularly the ones already enrolled there. It's what we've been doing up till now, and this rule change is unfair. We'll back out of it. We've seen the error of our ways. So that's what I'm hoping will happen. It's a financial burden that many of those families can't really cope with, but they want the best for their kids. They don't want to disrupt their education, and nor should they have to, in my view.
So what would you like to be able to promise these families?
Well, I'd like these families, at least the ones already with kids involved, I would like to promise them that they can have their kids continue to attend the school that they're in town now with a free bus service until they finish their schooling, at very least.
All right, Dr David Clark, thanks for your time this evening.
Thanks, Callum.